Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the International Conference InterSci 2024, hosted by Juraj Dobrila University of Pula, where we gather to celebrate global innovations in modern science. Congratulations to all participants for their outstanding contributions and dedication to advancing knowledge in their respective fields. I wish you all a successful and inspiring conference, filled with productive discussions and groundbreaking discoveries. We invite Mrs. Burick to the speech. The topic of her speech is the environmental impact of silver nanoparticles on Mediterranean sea urchin embryonal development.
The proliferation of silver nanoparticles, AGNP, across various industrial and consumer products raises concerns about their potential environmental impact, particularly in aquatic ecosystems. This study evaluates the species-specific effects of 60 nanometers AGNP on embryonal development in 3 Mediterranean sea urchin species, Arbatia lixula, Paracentrotus lividus, and Sphaerochinus granularis. Exposing embryos to AGNP concentrations ranging from 1 to 100 gl, one revealed significant developmental abnormalities, especially in A. lixula at the lowest concentrations. Our findings highlight the importance of exposure timing, with later stages showing greater sensitivity, suggesting additional mechanisms of AGNP toxicity. This research underscores the need for careful consideration of developmental stages in nanoparticle toxicity testing. Engineered nanoparticles, ENP, particularly silver nanoparticles, AGNP, are increasingly prevalent in various applications, from electronics to biomedicine. Their release into aquatic environments poses potential risks due to their stability and toxicity, particularly to marine organisms. AGNP are highly toxic to aquatic life, with toxicity influenced by their aggregation, agglomeration, and dissolution behaviors in high ionic strength environments like seawater. Understanding their environmental fate and impact is crucial for assessing ecological risks. Chemicals and AGNP characterization, silver nitrate and trisodium citrate were used to synthesize AGNP, characterized by UV absorbance spectroscopy, indicating a peak at 435 nanometers consistent with 60 nanometers nanoparticles. Embryo exposure. Embryos of A. lixula, P. lividus, and S. granularis were exposed to AGNP concentrations 100 gl, 1, at different developmental stages, fertilized egg, 4-cell, blastula, and gastrula. Exposure durations varied, with a focus on determining the impact of first exposure time on developmental outcomes. Species-specific sensitivity, Arbatia lixula, the most sensitive, showing significant developmental abnormalities at 10 gl, 1. Embryos first exposed at 6 and 24 hours post-fertilization were most affected. Paracentrotus lividus, similar effects occurred at higher concentrations, 50, 100 gl, 1, regardless of exposure timing. Sphaerochinus granularis exhibited moderate sensitivity with significant abnormalities at 10, 50 gl, 1. Impact of exposure timing. Later post-fertilization exposure resulted in greater developmental changes, suggesting that timing is critical in evaluating nanoparticle toxicity. Our findings align with previous studies indicating that heavy metals and nanoparticles disrupt sea urchin development. The sensitivity differences among species and stages suggest that AGNP toxicity involves complex mechanisms, potentially including Ag plus ion release and nanoparticle-specific interactions. These effects underscore the importance of considering both concentration and exposure timing in nanoparticle toxicity assessments. Silver nanoparticles significantly impact Mediterranean sea urchin embryonal development, with species-specific sensitivities and timing-dependent effects. A. lixula embryos are particularly vulnerable at low concentrations, while P. lividus and S. granularis show variable sensitivity. This study highlights the need for nuanced approaches in nanoparticle toxicity testing, accounting for species and developmental stage specificity. This thesis highlights the crucial role of nanoparticles' environmental fate and their species-specific effects on marine organisms, emphasizing the need for thorough and stage-specific toxicity evaluations to better understand and mitigate potential ecological impacts.
We invite you to the speech of Mr. Rongahuitan. The topic of his speech is Effectiveness of Development Limiting Boundaries in Curbing Urban Sprawl in Chinese Cities, a Case Study of Wuhan.
Development limiting boundaries are critical in regulating land use in Chinese cities, aiming to curb urban sprawl and protect the ecosystem and environment. China's recent land management laws mandate the delineation of urban development boundaries in national territory spatial planning for each city. However, the effectiveness of these boundaries in containing urban land growth remains underexplored. This study evaluates urban land growth inside and outside the ecological red line in Wuhan, utilizing spatial difference indifference models to determine the net effect of these boundaries. Findings indicate that urban land growth inside the ecological red line increased by an average of 2.2% post-policy intervention, suggesting limited effectiveness of the ecological baseline area regulation compared to pro-growth policies in the urban construction area. His study identifies inefficient coordination mechanisms, technical limitations, and the pivotal role of local governments as primary reasons for the policy's ineffectiveness. Future reforms should focus on differentiated and urban-rural integrated land use policy design and public supervision mechanisms. Urban sprawl presents significant challenges to sustainable development, particularly in rapidly urbanizing nations like China. To address these issues, development limiting boundaries have been implemented to control urban expansion and safeguard environmental resources. These boundaries are integrated into the land management laws, requiring cities to incorporate them into their spatial planning. Despite their widespread adoption, the effectiveness of these boundaries in managing urban growth has not been thoroughly examined. Using spatial difference indifference models, the research assesses the net effect of these boundaries on controlling urban sprawl. This study aims to fill this gap by investigating the impact of development limiting boundaries on urban land growth in Wuhan, a major Chinese city. Using spatial difference indifference models, the research assesses the net effect of these boundaries on controlling urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is a global issue, with various countries implementing different policies to manage it. In China, the concept of development limiting boundaries, including the ecological red line, has been a focal point in urban planning. Previous studies have highlighted the potential benefits of such boundaries in preserving green spaces and promoting sustainable development. However, empirical evidence on their effectiveness is limited. Research on similar policies in other countries shows mixed results. For instance, urban growth boundaries in the United States have been both praised for preserving farmland and criticized for contributing to increased housing prices. In Europe, green belts have been effective in maintaining open spaces but have faced challenges related to urban density. This study employs a spatial difference indifference model to analyze urban land growth in Wuhan. The model compares areas inside and outside the ecological red line before and after the implementation of the boundary policy. The data sources include satellite imagery, land use records, and policy documents from local government archives. The analysis reveals that urban land growth inside the ecological red line increased by an average of 2.2% following the policy intervention. This suggests that the ecological baseline area regulation was not as effective in curbing urban expansion as intended. Conversely, pro-growth policies in the urban construction area appear to have facilitated urban growth. Several factors contribute to the limited effectiveness of development limiting boundaries in Wuhan. 1. Inefficient coordination mechanisms. The lack of coordination between different governmental bodies and stakeholders hampers the effective implementation of boundary policies. This results in conflicting interests and priorities that undermine policy objectives. 2. Technical limitations. The precision of boundary delineation and enforcement is constrained by technical challenges, such as outdated mapping technologies and insufficient monitoring infrastructure. This leads to ambiguities and loopholes that developers can exploit. 3. Role of local governments. Local governments play a crucial role in urban planning and land management. Their pursuit of economic growth often conflicts with environmental protection goals, leading to lenient enforcement of development limiting boundaries. Policy implications. To enhance the effectiveness of development limiting boundaries, several reforms are necessary. 1. Differentiated land use policies. Policies should be tailored to address the specific needs and characteristics of different urban and rural areas. This includes recognizing the varying impacts of development on the environment and local communities. 2. Urban-rural integration. A holistic approach that integrates urban and rural planning can help balance development needs with environmental protection. This involves creating policies that promote sustainable development across the entire urban-rural continuum. 3. Public supervision mechanisms. Strengthening public oversight and participation in land use planning can improve transparency and accountability. Mechanisms such as public hearings, stakeholder consultations, and independent audits can ensure that policies are implemented effectively and fairly. Conclusion. The study concludes that while development limiting boundaries are a promising tool for managing urban sprawl, their current implementation in Wuhan is insufficiently effective. The observed increase in urban land growth inside the ecological redline post-policy intervention highlights the need for more robust and coordinated efforts. Future reforms should focus on enhancing coordination mechanisms, addressing technical limitations, and integrating urban and rural planning to achieve sustainable development goals.
We invite Mrs. Katerina Borovaik to speak. The topic of her speech is galectin-3 as a marker of cardiovascular risk in patients with heart failure and concomitant type 2 diabetes.
According to the latest data from the European Society of Cardiology in 2022, more than 64 million people worldwide suffer from heart failure, HF. HF is a multifaceted and life-threatening syndrome characterized by high prevalence of morbidity and mortality, low functional capacity and quality of life, and high costs. 1. In addition, it is widely known that type 2 diabetes is very common in patients with HF. In connection with the facts listed above, early diagnosis to provide timely treatment plays a very important role in increasing the duration and quality of life. For diagnostic and prognostic purposes of HF, natriuretic peptide, NUP, is currently widely used, a neurohormone secreted by the ventricles of the heart. However, there is an inverse relationship between the level of NUP and body mass index, which complicates the diagnosis of HF in obese patients. Therefore, recent active studies of the galectin-3 biomarker, which is a chimeric protein from the lectin family, to obtain additional information about HF is an urgent medical and social problem. The goal of the work: to study the diagnostic significance of determining the plasma level of galectin-3 in patients with heart failure and concomitant type 2 diabetes materials and methods. Literature was searched and analyzed using the PubMed Scientometric database and several domestic medical journals. Results and discussion. Galectin-3 has a variety of biological effects, ranging from cell adhesion and migration to cell growth, differentiation, activation and termination of apoptosis, and plays an important role in the inflammatory response and the development of fibrosis. At the same time, it should be noted that the opposite effects of this biomarker on cells depend on its localization, intracellularly, protection of cells from apoptosis, extracellularly, cell death. As HF progresses, the degree of fibrosis also increases, so despite the fact that galectin-3 is a fibrinogenic protein necessary for normal healing, at the same time its persistent expression and secretion in cardiac tissue leads to adverse remodeling of the heart. Two meta-analyses demonstrated that elevated galectin-3 expression levels are associated with mortality in acute and chronic HF, 4-5, while another systematic review showed that galectin-3 is ineffective in predicting cardiovascular mortality, especially under the influence of certain clinical factors, including glomerular filtration rate, left ventricular ejection fraction and N-terminal pro-B-type natriuretic peptide, 6. In the valsartan HF study, for every 1 μg/L increase in galectin-3, an associated increased risk of mortality, primary morbidity, and HF hospitalization was observed over a 4-month follow-up. In contrast to NUP, when interpreting the results of determining the level of galectin-3, it is important to consider the following features. The level of galectin-3 is not affected by HF decompensation, as it reflects the presence or absence of the process underlying the disease. The distribution of the level of galectin-3 is shown only in patients with established CHF. The increased level of galectin-3 is usually very stable over time. The influence of inflammation and therapy on the concentration of galectin-3 has not been proven. A galectin-3 level above 17.8 ng/ml is associated with an increased risk of adverse outcome, while there is still no generally accepted prognostically significant threshold level for cerebral NUP or precursor brain natriuretic peptide. The role of galectin-3 in type 2 diabetes mellitus (DM) is ambiguous. Some studies suggest that galectin-3 deficiency is associated with insulin resistance, and galectin-3 exerts a protective effect in type 2 DM by acting as a receptor for end products progressive glycation. However, a recent study found that knocking out the galectin-3 gene in mice fed a high-fat diet significantly reduced the development of insulin resistance. In addition, this study also provides preliminary evidence that extracellular galectin-3 directly binds the insulin receptor and attenuates downstream pathways, suggesting that galectin-3 is a novel target in insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Conclusions. The obtained results of galectin-3 measurements should be interpreted together with the clinical picture and other instrumental research methods, echocardiography, Dopplerography, as an auxiliary marker in assessing the prognosis for patients with CHF. Since galectin-3 is causally involved in pathological myocardial fibrosis, it has been suggested that it contributes to the development of HF, and therefore may become a target for HF therapy. The role of galectin-3 in type 2 diabetes is ambiguous.
We invite Mrs. Sanjayjana Babik to speak. The topic of her speech is the introduction of VAR technology in football, enhancing decision-making processes.
Football, often referred to as the beautiful game, has undergone significant technological advancements in recent years. One of the most transformative innovations has been the introduction of Video Assistant Referee (VAR) technology. VAR aims to enhance the decision-making process for on-field referees by providing them with additional support from a team of experts located in the Video Operations Room (VOR). This collaboration is intended to improve the accuracy of critical decisions during matches, thus preserving the integrity and fairness of the sport. However, the effective implementation of VAR requires thorough education and practical experience for all participants involved. This paper explores the perceptions of Croatian VARs and assistant VARs, AVARs, regarding the use of VAR technology, highlighting the benefits and challenges associated with its application. VAR technology was introduced to address the limitations of human refereeing, particularly in situations that are difficult to judge in real time. The primary functions of VAR include reviewing decisions related to goals, penalties, red cards, and cases of mistaken identity. The process involves a team of VARs and AVARs who analyze video footage and communicate their findings to the on-field referee. This collaboration is intended to ensure that decisions are as accurate as possible, thereby reducing the likelihood of controversial outcomes. The introduction of VAR has not only revolutionized the decision-making process but also sparked debates among fans, players, and officials. Proponents argue that VAR enhances fairness by correcting clear and obvious errors, while critics contend that it disrupts the flow of the game and may lead to inconsistent interpretations of the rules. Despite these differing viewpoints, the overall goal of VAR is to support referees and uphold the integrity of football. Education and practical experience in VAR implementation. The successful implementation of VAR technology relies heavily on the education and practical experience of all participants involved. This includes on-field referees, VARs, and AVARs who must be well versed in the technology and its application. Training programs are designed to equip referees with the skills needed to operate VAR systems effectively and make informed decisions based on video evidence. Education programs typically cover various aspects of VAR technology, including the technical components, operational procedures, and communication protocols. Referees undergo rigorous training sessions that simulate real match scenarios, allowing them to practice using VAR in a controlled environment. This practical experience is crucial for building confidence and ensuring that referees can seamlessly integrate VAR into their decision-making process during actual matches. Furthermore, continuous professional development is essential to keep referees updated on the latest advancements in VAR technology and any changes to the rules of the game. Regular workshops, seminars, and assessments help maintain high standards of performance and ensure that referees are proficient in using VAR effectively. Research on perceptions of VAR technology among Croatian VARs and AVARs. To gain insights into the effectiveness of VAR technology and its impact on football, a study was conducted among Croatian VARs and AVARs who have received training and education on the use of VAR. The research aimed to understand their perceptions of VAR, including its benefits, challenges, and overall impact on the decision-making process. The study employed a mixed methods approach, combining quantitative surveys with qualitative interviews. The survey was designed to gather data on the participants' experiences with VAR, their confidence in using the technology, and their views on its effectiveness. The interviews provided an opportunity for participants to share their personal experiences and elaborate on their perceptions of VAR in greater detail. Participants included a diverse group of Croatian VARs and AVARs, all of whom had undergone formal training in VAR technology. The data collected from the surveys and interviews were analyzed to identify common themes and patterns in the participants' responses. The results of the study revealed several key insights into the perceptions of Croatian VARs and AVARs regarding the use of VAR technology in football. 1. Enhanced decision-making accuracy. Participants overwhelmingly agreed that VAR technology has improved the accuracy of decision-making in football. The ability to review video footage and consult with a team of experts allows referees to make more informed decisions, reducing the likelihood of errors and controversial calls. 2. Increased confidence. The training and education provided to VARs and AVARs have significantly increased their confidence in using the technology. Participants reported feeling more assured in their decision-making abilities, knowing that they have the support of VAR to verify critical decisions. 3. Challenges and limitations. Despite the benefits, participants also identified several challenges associated with VAR technology. One of the primary concerns was the potential for VAR to disrupt the flow of the game. The time taken to review decisions can lead to stoppages, which may affect the momentum of the match and frustrate players and fans. 4. Consistency in application. Another challenge highlighted by participants was the need for consistency in the application of VAR. Different referees may interpret the same incident differently, leading to variations in decision-making. Standardized guidelines and continuous training were suggested as ways to address this issue and ensure uniformity in the use of VAR. 5. Communication and coordination. Effective communication between on-field referees and the VAR team was identified as a critical factor in the success of VAR technology. Participants emphasized the importance of clear and concise communication to ensure that decisions are made efficiently and accurately. The findings of this study highlight the positive impact of VAR technology on the decision-making process in football, while also underscoring the need for ongoing education and training. The enhanced accuracy and increased confidence reported by Croatian VARs and AVARs demonstrate the potential of VAR to improve the fairness and integrity of the game. However, the challenges related to game flow disruption, consistency, and communication must be addressed to maximize the benefits of VAR. The insights gained from this research can inform the future development and implementation of VAR technology in football. Based on the findings, several recommendations can be made. 1. Enhanced training programs. Continuous professional development and training programs should be established to keep referees updated on the latest advancements in VAR technology and ensure consistent application of the rules. 2. Standardized guidelines. Developing standardized guidelines for the use of VAR can help ensure uniformity in decision-making and reduce discrepancies between different referees. 3. Improved communication protocols. Enhancing communication protocols between on-field referees and the VAR team can streamline the decision-making process and minimize disruptions to the game. 4. Public education and transparency. Increasing public awareness and understanding of VAR technology can help mitigate criticism and build trust among fans. Transparency in the decision-making process can also enhance the credibility of VAR. 5. Technological advancements. Continued investment in technological advancements can improve the efficiency and accuracy of VAR systems. Innovations such as automated offside detection and enhanced video analysis tools can further support referees in making accurate decisions. Conclusion: the introduction of VAR technology in football has brought about significant changes to the decision-making process, providing referees with valuable support and enhancing the accuracy of critical decisions. The perceptions of Croatian VARs and AVARs highlight the benefits of VAR, including improved decision-making accuracy and increased confidence among referees. However, challenges related to game flow disruption, consistency, and communication must be addressed to fully realize the potential of VAR technology. The findings of this research offer valuable insights for the future development and implementation of VAR in football. By investing in continuous education, standardized guidelines, improved communication protocols, public education, and technological advancements, the football community can enhance the effectiveness and acceptance of VAR technology. Ultimately, the goal is to uphold the integrity and fairness of the game, ensuring that football remains a sport that is both beautiful and just.
We invite Mrs. Oleksandra Poltoratska to speak. The topic of her speech is application of elements of research education in the process of teaching physics.
In today's rapidly evolving educational landscape, the development of critical thinking and research skills in students is essential. Research education, which emphasizes inquiry-based learning and the scientific method, is particularly effective in fostering these skills. Physics, with its focus on understanding the fundamental principles governing the natural world, offers an ideal context for incorporating research education. This article explores the application of elements of research education in the process of teaching physics, highlighting its relevance, theoretical foundations, experimental methods, and practical implementation in specialized schools. Relevance of the topic: the relevance of this study is underscored by the increasing emphasis on developing higher-order thinking skills and scientific literacy in students. Traditional teaching methods often focus on rote memorization and procedural knowledge, which can limit students' ability to apply concepts in novel situations. Research education, by contrast, encourages active learning, critical thinking, and problem-solving, preparing students for the complexities of modern science and technology. In physics education, incorporating research elements can enhance student engagement, deepen understanding, and foster a lifelong interest in scientific inquiry. Theoretical provisions of the research education involves teaching students how to conduct scientific investigations, including formulating hypotheses, designing experiments, collecting and analyzing data, and drawing conclusions. It is grounded in constructivist theories of learning, which posit that knowledge is actively constructed by the learner through experience and reflection. Key components of research education include inquiry-based learning, collaborative projects, and the use of real-world problems to drive investigation. Inquiry-based learning, IBL, is a pedagogical approach that encourages students to explore questions, problems, or scenarios, often derived from their own curiosities. IBL promotes active learning and critical thinking by allowing students to take ownership of their learning process. In physics, IBL can involve experiments, simulations, and problem-solving activities that require students to apply theoretical concepts to practical situations. Physics education aims to develop a deep understanding of the laws of nature, fostering analytical and problem-solving skills. By integrating research education into physics teaching, educators can create a learning environment that emphasizes scientific inquiry and experimentation. This approach not only enhances conceptual understanding, but also cultivates skills such as data analysis, critical evaluation, and effective communication of scientific ideas. Experimental methods in pedagogical research to investigate the impact of research education on the learning outcomes of physics students. A mixed methods approach will be employed. This approach combines quantitative and qualitative data collection methods to provide a comprehensive understanding of the educational intervention. Research design: the study will use a quasi-experimental design, with a control group and an experimental group. Both groups will consist of 10th and 11th grade students from a specialized school, matched based on their prior academic performance in physics. The participants will include 60 students, divided equally between the control and experimental groups. The experimental group will engage in research-based physics projects, while the control group will continue with traditional instruction. Instruments: 1. Physics Achievement Test, PAT, to assess improvements in physics understanding and application. 2. Critical Thinking Skills Test, CTST, to measure the development of critical thinking skills before and after the intervention. 3. Student Engagement Questionnaire, SEQ, to evaluate student engagement and attitudes towards physics. 4. Project Assessment Rubric, PAR, to evaluate the quality of student research projects, based on criteria such as scientific rigor, creativity, and presentation. Procedure: 1. Pre-test, administer the PAT and CTST to both groups. 2. Intervention, over a period of 12 weeks. The experimental group will participate in research-based physics projects. These projects will involve formulating research questions, designing and conducting experiments, analyzing data, and presenting findings. 3. Post-test, re-administer the PAT and CTST to both groups. 4. Qualitative data collection, conduct interviews and focus group discussions with students and teachers from the experimental group to gather insights into their experiences and perceptions. Data analysis: quantitative data will be analyzed using statistical methods to compare the pre- and post-test scores of the control and experimental groups. Qualitative data will be analyzed thematically to identify common themes and insights related to the effectiveness of research education in physics. Conclusion: the application of elements of research education in teaching physics has significant potential to enhance students' critical thinking, problem-solving, and research skills. By engaging students in authentic scientific inquiries, educators can foster a deeper understanding of physical principles and cultivate a scientific mindset. This research aims to provide empirical evidence of the benefits of research education in physics, contributing to the development of innovative teaching practices that prepare students for the demands of the 21st century.
So, we sincerely thank all participants of the International Conference InterSci 2024. Special thanks to Mrs. Petra Buric and Sanjayjana Babik from Juraj Dobrila University of Pula, Croatia for organizing the conference. We invite everyone to our next international conference on scientific communication and interdisciplinary research, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia, October 2nd to 5th, 2024. Acceptance of materials until 20th September 2024, inclusive. Thank you. Till next time.